Okay. All right, if you are seeing us, we are starting shortly. Okay, perfect. It is on. We are good to go. All right, so I am here with Raul. Is that correct, Raul?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, the Church of Satan. And Raul, I really appreciate it. I know that we did this last week, and we got it all set up, and everything was working fine, and I had my screen capture messed up, so and also my mic was not picking up very well. So I really appreciate you coming back and doing this. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and so what I wanted to talk about a little bit was kind of in the last time we were talking about how you incorporate Satanism into your own life, and kind of how it really is a part of your person. It's not just something that you kind of like put on like a coat and become a Satanist. It's actually part of your person. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, that's an important aspect of Satan, of the philosophy of Satanism in and of itself, is that it should be something that you're naturally attuned to and attracted to, not something that you need to change who you are in order to fit. I think that kind of attitude is going to lead to a lot of frustration, and you're just going to end up wasting your time. So for most Satanists, and myself included, they're living their life to the fullest is Satanism. So we say Satanism in action. So that's what I do with my hobbies, whether it's music or art, writing, even the things that I'm attracted to as a consumer. I don't like the word consumer, but the things that I enjoy. Like, the movies that I watch, and the music I listen to, the books that I read. All of that has a satanic current to it. Now, it may not be explicit. I mean, I don't only watch satanic horror movies, or I don't listen to just black metal or satanic music, or what's explicitly satanic music or things like that. But all the things that I enjoy tap into some part of who I am and part of what is in my nature. Part of the satanic philosophy is something called erotic crystallization inertia, or ECI, which is when you're young, when you're a child, not so much a child, like preteen. I don't know exactly the details, and those things vary. I mean, this is not experimented on. So in your early age, you get you're set in the things that you enjoy, and it's through your experiences as a child, whether the scents that are around you, the music that you listen to, the environment that you're in. These kind of things kind of set in your psyche, and they kind of set the things that you're going to be attracted to throughout your whole life. So that is a satanic idea, and the things that I enjoy now are part of that. And that way, almost everything I do, as who I am is satanic. I think one of the misconceptions people have is that Satanists go around, with, Baphomets and, these pentagram necklaces all the time and yelling "Hail Satan" at every chance they get. And those people, right. I think, and we call them first phase Satanists. And I understand that, I might have been something like that in my youth, as an early teenager. And so I can kind of empathize with that. But, when you're going into your adulthood, doing that, many years, having access to satanic literature and access to, the various ways that one can apply Satanism, not so explicitly, I think it becomes something more like you're trying to project something. You're trying to overcompensate with something. There's maybe some kind of cognitive dissonance in your head that you're trying to overcome. So you're, trying to flash it more. And I think some of those people are just very unhappy with themselves, I think. But I don't want to, at other times, just some people are flashy. I mean, that's their personality too. So I can't be too judgmental, but that's just how I see it.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I know for myself, I think that definitely you also get people who kind of get into magic and witchcraft, stuff like that, doing sort of the same thing. They kind of have this persona that they want to take on, whereas they're not really bringing it into their life and making it a part of their philosophy and their and their being, which I think ultimately it comes down to. It's one of the things I get frustrated with about people who have this opinion about the occult or even Satanism, period, is that there is more to it than just that stereotypical surface that other people perceive in those of us who practice what we practice,
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely use in being open about it in some instances, especially if you're a performer. If you're a performer, you're an artist, I can totally see that, using that. Satanism sells, Satanism shocks. So I think in the right doses and in the right situations, that kind of stuff can definitely be effective, and you can use it to your advantage. So, I think that one should be rational and productive in the way one does that kind of stuff. Again, but I try to see from one of the principles of Satanism is having perspective. A sin is lack of perspective. So I do try, as I interact with many kinds of Satanists, I don't want to say kinds of Satanists, many Satanists, many members of the organization of the Church of Satan, and I see the different ways people apply Satanism. I see that it can vary, and I'm not always going to be in agreement with it, and it's not always going to be my style, my taste. But as an individual, I can only speak for myself and comment on others, but I cannot dictate what others should or should not do.
Yeah, and one of the things that we had talked about before, which I think is important for people to know, is we were talking about how Anton LaVey really kind of wanted to move the face of Satanism away from the Hollywood kind of horns and and pitchfork sort of concepts, and I really like that.
Yeah, and that was part of our High Priestess, Peggy Nadramana's, her presentation during our 50th anniversary conclave. One of the things that she brought up in her presentation was that in the beginnings of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey knew that this stuff would shock and cause some media sensation. So he played that up, and he went to TV interviews with a cape and with big flashy rings, and would do photo shoots with the horns, with the devil horns and the pitchfork. And he really played up that idea of, an actual Church of Satan and an actual, high priest of Satanism, and, what he was dubbed the Black Pope. So he egged that on, a bit, and but he realized that there comes a point where that starts to backfire. You start to attract the wrong kind of people, and you start to present the philosophy in a way that is not complete. It leaves out the more in-depth, the more complicated, more nuanced parts of the philosophy. So there was a photographer, I believe it was a photographer from Look magazine. It had one of his most famous cover photos, which is him holding the skull in his profile. And that photo, and I could be wrong, but I believe that was the one. And that photographer wanted to come back to do another photo shoot of the Church of Satan and Anton LaVey. And he said, sure, you can come under one condition, that you're going to show us as we are, not as not the performance that we put on. So he agreed to it, and he did some photos that were just recently unearthed, and it was the Church of Satan as ladies and gentlemen, dressed up. And I wouldn't say even dressed up. They were just dressed as they are, very well groomed, well presented. This was an organization. This was a group of people, of professionals, of artists, definitely too. But they were people who were out there effectively causing change in the world. These weren't these kind of they weren't like rabble. They were rabble rousers in some ways, but
Right.
These were people that carried themselves with a certain element, with a certain grace. So, and that's part of the philosophy is knowing that aesthetics play a role, and having a strong sense of aesthetics, and using lesser magic to your advantage. So that was the Church of Satan that he wanted to present going forward. And later in interviews, he would say that would be the role of the Church of Satan, is to present Satanism as a philosophy, as a religion, and as a lifestyle. All these things are intertwined. So that's where LaVey wanted to move Satanism towards, and the Church of Satan in general.
Mm-hmm. And what if you were going to describe the Church of Satan to somebody, how would you describe it, or what would you say are some of the main core philosophies and maybe ideologies behind it? I don't know if that's a good description, but
no, that works. You can go to the Church of Satan website at the churchofsatan.com, and you can see all the statements, all the sins and rules of the earth, for yourself. And I'm not the kind of person that memorizes these things, and I embody them, and I live it. But so if I were to summarize it, I would just say that it's about carnal living. It's about recognizing this as our one and only life and making the most of it, and being in tune with your instincts, being in tune with your natural instincts, and applying those things in an effective and productive manner in the real world. Being self-interested, egoistic. I'm not afraid of the word ego. I mean, I think nowadays, ego is probably a more sinister word than Satan. Just, you're selfish is more of a sinister idea than anything else. But that is part of Satanism. It's because we do see ourselves as our own gods. We see ourselves at the center of our universe, and we share our universe with others. And I have a wife, a beautiful, amazing wife, and I value her greatly. But I recognize that she brings me joy. She brings me love and attention, and just she inspires me in many ways. So in that way, I don't see her as less than me in some ways, but we're together on a path together. So I think a lot of people mistake Satanism as like some kind of sociopathic philosophy. They say, oh, you're just these egotistical people that just only think for yourself. And it's like, well, yeah, sure, maybe some are, but that can be very counterproductive. So you always have to kind of, in Satanism, always think about, okay, where do these principles come to a point where they're counterproductive? So that's rational. So rational thought is an important part of satanic philosophy, and also being open to the unknown. We do incorporate ideas of magic and ritual and ceremony in our religion, and we are open to these things, and we're open to the effects of these things, whether they're purely psychological or there's something more. We're not sure, but we give our members and people who are attracted to Satanism the tools that they can use to play around with that, to toy with it, but also to keep a skeptical, rational grounding to these things.
Yes,
realize that some of these things can be very subjective, but that's not to negate the usefulness of the power of ritual. Even as a purely subjective experience, that can be a very beneficial element of Satanism. So I don't, when I say psychology, magic as psychology, I don't mean to denigrate it in any way. I don't mean to lessen that, the effect of that. That can be a very powerful tool. So all these things are part of Satanism.
Right. Yeah. And it's and I agree with you. I think that psychological magic, I guess it's a good way to describe it, is part of it, And one of the things that I appreciate that you mentioned was the concept of understanding that ego serves a purpose. Ego is important. And like a lot of my video responses that I started doing to a lot of these evangelical people was to talk about how, we didn't want to become God, which they always said. But in a sense, I began to actually change that position, because actually if you perceive yourself in that way, you're not necessarily perceiving yourself as, oh, I am God and I can do everything. Essentially what you're doing is you are taking responsibility. Because a lot of times you'll see that some people, they push their own personal responsibility off onto a higher deity, and so it's kind of like, well, I'm innocent because there's no way that I have to take full responsibility for my actions. And I appreciate what you said, because essentially what you're saying is that we understand that we are responsible. There's no higher authority. It is your responsibility. So if you do something, that's your responsibility. You can't blame it on Satan. You can't blame it on God. You have to accept it yourself. So I agree with you about that.
Yeah, and I think that is a good thing to bring up. That is an important part of the philosophy. I mean, it's one of our, I would say, core principles is that, responsibility to the responsible. Take ownership of these things. And in that way, Satanism can be considered a very dangerous religion, because we're telling people, be responsible for yourself, be an individual, and go out there and affect the world. And for some people, that can be very destructive, and they'll eventually try to cop out. They'll say, "Oh, well, the devil made me do it. Oh, I read the Satanic Bible and it told me to, kill people," or things like that. And it's like, no, we completely reject that. We believe that you should be self-interested, be rational, but at the same time, but take responsibility. Take responsibility for those things. If you, want to live on the edge of things, take responsibility for it. Take responsibility for your actions. That was one of the things that LaVey was very much against in terms of politics and law and order, where people who would go to jail, to prison, and commit some heinous crime, and then say, "Well, the devil made me do it, and I'm a Christian, and I've converted, and I confess, and I ask for forgiveness."
Right.
And the more holy individuals in authority might say, "Okay, well, he's found peace with God, so we could try to make amends," or some kind of thing. And that infuriated LaVey. I mean, that's completely anti-satanic, because you committed this thing, now you've found an out. I mean,
right.
Now that I think about it, it could be satanic in that you found an out in the system and you're trying to work the system to get yourself out of it. But the Satanist, on the other hand, is going to try to squash that. So
right.
I try to see things from many perspectives, and it's a good thought experiment.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I like to look at things from a different perspective too. And one of my arguments, I got into an argument with somebody about, well, I could essentially live my life. I could screw people over. I could kill people. I could rob people. I could do all of these things. And then, right before I die, repent my sins. Yeah. And then I would essentially be clean, and I would go up to heaven. And I said, so how is that fair compared to, like, let's say an Aborigine who lives in Borneo, who's never heard of the Bible, never heard of God or Jesus, lived his life, did nothing wrong, and then he's going to go to hell? How is that? How is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, those are the kind of things that I asked myself. I was raised Catholic, and I went through the steps to be confirmed, and I did my confirmation, my communion, first communion, and all that. But part of that was studying scripture and studying Catholicism, and that's some of the things that you learn. And as a young boy, I realized, okay, that this was, things weren't adding up. Things weren't making sense, and it became clear to me that this was more of a system of control, a system of managing people and political more than anything else. So that's what kind of drove me to look into other things, and that's where I found Satanism.
Mm-hmm. And I just noticed we got a couple of people asking questions, but we'll be taking questions, I think, later on. And so let me see. One of the things I also kind of wanted to talk about was how did the Church of Satan get started? What was what's the history behind behind that?
Well, the Church of Satan was started out of a group of people that were meeting with LaVey. LaVey was interested in the occult and was interested in these kinds of supernatural things, and he was having people over his house. He would hold seminars, lectures on the occult, and this was in the mid 60s. And out of that, he developed a core group of people that he called the Magic Circle, and these were people that were more genuinely interested in these things, and he would meet with regularly. So he thought that he should actually take the name that is most appropriate to that group and to this kind of study, which is the name of Satan. And he looked into the history of Satanism, and he found that there were people, that played with Satanism and the idea of Satan in the past, but there was never a formalized actual satanic philosophy or religion. Mm-hmm. Satanism was always a kind of derogatory term. It was something that people accused each other of. Jews, people would always accuse the Jews of being satanic or being Satan, or Muslims considered Christians satanic, pagans were all satanic. So, and everyone would try to kind of defend themselves against accusations of Satanism and things like that. The witches were all satanic or of the devil's name. So, but there was never, there were some small instances of people saying, yeah, I am a Satanist, and this is my poetry in the name of Satan and stuff like that. But there wasn't an actual defined set of principles that were satanic from a satanic perspective. I mean, there were some things written by Catholics, by Christians, saying these are what Satanists believe, but that's coming from a Christian. That's coming from the other side of the propaganda machine. So, why would you trust that? So, LaVey decided to take the name of Satan as a Satanist, to acknowledge himself as a Satanist and say, these are the things that define Satanism. And he was influenced by a variety of things in the occult, and also mostly secular, actually. So, because he was a secular person, he toyed, he was interested in the occult and in the supernatural, but at heart, at the base, he was a secular person. And he saw, well, how is Satanism as a philosophy, how does that apply to the human animal? Not so much metaphysical or anything, but at the human animal, what makes the human attracted to Satan, to the idea of Satan? And he noticed that throughout almost every religion, the ideas of carnality, of sexual, carnal impulse, and the ideas of selfishness and egoism were all almost always associated with the devil. And that was like this long current throughout history, that these things were evil, were of the devil, and God was to be selfless, to be to try to achieve some greater, some higher sense of being, or to achieve oneness with God, to be without material needs, or without any kind of guilt and things like that. So, I would say, it is very much filled with guilt. A lot of these religions are filled with guilt. Mm-hmm. What I mean is, they were the pursuit of something otherworldly. So Satanism is of this world, and he saw Satan as ruler of this world, and the Church of Satan he started as a philosophy that acknowledged that and would promote that. So that's where the Church of Satan started in 1966, with those ideas. And then a few years later, he wrote the Satanic Bible, which put in text his ideas that he was talking and kind of bouncing around with the Magic Circle and the Church of Satan. And it went from there. He started to get in touch with other individuals from across the country. He set up these grotto systems that came and went, and he saw the Church of Satan as a loose network of individuals, and that's very important. He never saw it as a traditional kind of organization. He saw it as a group of non-joiners. A lot of Church of Satan members don't join anything else. They might join, even if they do join the Church of Satan, they're not active. They're not constantly trying to figure out, what's the Church of Satan doing now? What should I be doing? Tell me what to do. Like, no, live your own life. Go about your life. Let us know. And maybe, if you need additional, if you need someone to collaborate with, bounce ideas off of, there may be other people in the Church of Satan that can help you with that. But it's very much an individual kind of union of individuals, a union of egoists per se, and some would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was actually leading up to my next question was, is the Church of Satan sort of a central group, and then they have other groups like let's say in Sweden they open up a Church of Satan. Would it be, or is it kind of connected to the Church of Satan, or is I don't know if exactly I'm describing this correctly. I guess what I'm asking is, you mentioned the grotto sort of aspect. So does that mean that they are a separate entity, or they're still a part of the central Church of Satan, or the first church?
Well, I'll say that there are no other churches of Satan. There is just one Church of Satan.
Okay.
And the grotto system was something that's no longer in place, and it actually came and went. It was activated and deactivated. But the grottos were essentially like local chapters in different parts of the country or even the world. And they were essentially groups of people that would get together for ritual, for ceremony, and they would put out maybe newsletters or magazines and things like that. But LaVey himself realized that a lot of these grottos were becoming counterproductive in a way. You know, there are these people that were obsessed with getting together with other people, that were obsessed with huddling up, and they were obsessed with the pomp and flair of Satanism, dressing up, for ritual constantly and asking, oh, when's the next ritual? I have this wish I need to grant, and my rent is due. Can we meet in so I can cast this spell? And so he realized that this was attracting the kind of people that he thought were losers and that were dependent on others. So he dissolved the grotto system. We, in later years, we reactivated it to try it out again and realized it was going down the same direction again, so we deactivated it again. And we use the internet now as a way of communicating and organizing with other individuals. That said, we recently started something called an Outpost program, and this is for international, because we do realize there's a growing audience for Satanism in the non-English speaking world. And we have what we call outposts in Europe and in other places where where individuals are working in collaboration with others on translating work, and getting in touch with media there that is always interested in interviewing Satanists or members of the Church of Satan. And that way, they don't have to fly over here to the United States. I've had to do that before. I interviewed with a TV station from Amsterdam, and they came to California to interview me. And if there was somebody out there, it was great, it was fun. I would love to do that plenty, but if they had somebody local, that would have been great. And we were trying to set up that kind of stuff so that we can facilitate that kind of thing. So we're trying to see it from a way that's most productive, and not something that facilitates hurting. We don't like hurting, so that's where we are. And I do not recognize any other. I do see, online, some other countries, Church of Satan. This country's Church of Satan. Church of Satan. All these websites that pop up.
Right.
They don't have any. They're usually. For what, $10 a month or $30 a year, I can start a website and call myself whatever I want. So
right. Well, exactly, and that's something that I think almost every organization deals with, is that somebody can just start a website and claim to be whatever, and then people assume that just because they share the same name as you, that somehow you're associated with them. And it's like, right. No, we don't have anything to do with them. They're their own. Right. They're their own entity. But that is curious. I have another question for you. I know that there are other organizations like the Satanic Temple, or I think it's called the Satanic International Network. Are you affiliate. Am I saying it right? Is it Satanic International Network? You know what? Let me drop that one. Let me just say the Satanic Temple. Are you associated with them at all, or are they separate?
No, I'm not. We're not associated with them at all.
Okay. No. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was curious. And then the other one, I don't even want to.
No, we're not associated with any other quote unquote satanic group or anything like that. No, it's very clear, what delineates our philosophy and what doesn't. Just churchofsatan.com, you can see everything in there is of our network. No, we don't work with any other organization. Okay.
So basically, yeah. So if somebody went to your website, that outlines the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. And there's a link section so you can see, stuff that our members are interested in, the projects that they're affiliated with, and you can check the news feed and see, what our members are doing there. And so from that point, I guess you can see the things that are not directly Church of Satan, but what our individual members are doing. That's where you can check that stuff out. But we do not work with any other organization.
Okay. And I know last time we had talked a little bit about how you had gotten involved in Satanism, and I'm still very interested in hearing about that again.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I like I mentioned earlier, I was raised Catholic, and through my study of Christianity, I started to become a doubter, and I started to research other philosophies and other religions and other aspects of the occult. And I realized that amongst all these things, amongst all these religions and philosophies, that Satanism was the one that I was naturally attracted to, that I was naturally attuned to. I didn't have to change who I was in any way. I didn't have to, contemplate the meaning of life and who I am to try to become something I'm not. With these other philosophies and religions, there was a lot of that I felt. It was against my nature, and I'm definitely influenced by all kinds of things that are satanic or not satanic. But with Satanism, I really took to, and this was maybe about 15 years old or so when I recognized myself as a Satanist. And so I kept up with the books. I purchased the books by Anton LaVey, and it wasn't until a little bit later, maybe about 18 or so, when I started to explore more counterculture, arts, music, literature, and things like that. And I started to get really involved in the underground counterculture scene in New York City. And one of the things I was really involved in was the zine culture, the magazine culture. And one of the stores that I went to frequently, actually this was more like 17, I was still in high school, because I would ditch school. And then I would kind of educate myself on things.
So,
that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I ditched a lot of school and I taught myself a lot of things. But there was one literally underground bookstore. You had to go down into a basement called See Hear, so like seeing and hearing. And they had just wall-to-wall magazines and books on everything from anarchism to punk, industrial music, primitive culture, Satanism, Thelema, everything. It was just this treasure trove of ideas. And I really took to, that's where I did a lot of my learning, but I took to Satanism, and I read the Black Flame, which was the Church of Satan's official magazine. Mm-hmm. And this was really critical for me because, up to that point, I read all of LaVey's stuff. So I saw Satanism as LaVey defined it, as LaVey explained it in his work, which I obviously appreciate greatly and I am attracted to. But the Black Flame showed me other Satanists applying Satanism in ways that were different from LaVey. And that was very important because it showed to me that Satanists were individuals, that Satanists were actually doing things of their own accord and were varied in their perspectives and their aesthetics and their interests. There was everything from all kinds of politics, left, right, center politics. There were articles on Afro-Caribbean traditions, on European traditions, on music of all kinds, whether from classical to metal and to punk or electronic music, or to jazz and all that kind of stuff. It just varied people's interests. So this was very, very important to me because it showed to me that Satanism was alive, it was active, that there was a Church of Satan out there, that it was alive and it was active, and it was individualistic. Mm-hmm. So that was very important, and I kept up with the Black Flame, and then I followed up. In the Black Flame, this was before Google and things like that, so there were all these websites, message boards that you can check out, so I got in touch with those things, and I just started learning more and more. And I got more and more active in my own interests, which are music, and just counterculture in general. So I was involved in DJing, promoting, organizing concerts in New York City, mostly of the what's called neo-folk or industrial noise, experimental music, these kind of outsider art activities. And some of the people that I was organized with were Satanists, and I knew that, and some of them I didn't know until after the fact, and they noticed maybe something I was wearing, and they said, "Oh, are you in the Church of Satan? Are you a Satanist?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I am, but I'm not in the Church of Satan." Mm-hmm. So I kept on having to say that a lot, and during one event actually that I organized, it was almost half of the audience was Church of Satan members because many of the performers were Church of Satan members, and in the audience was High Priest Peter H. Gilmore, and I got to meet him. I got to interact with him and other members in the flesh, and I could see that they were out there supporting each other. Still individualistic, still of their own sovereignty, but supporting each other. And I thought that was very impressive, and that was something I wanted to be involved in because I saw a mutually beneficial situation out of that. I can get support from them, and I can support them in turn. And I saw that, as a rationally self-interested individual. So I joined the Church of Satan at that point, and I became more involved with other members who were in bands and projects and art, in the arts, photographers. And since then, it's been just a flurry of activity. I've been almost on a weekly, sometimes even daily basis, on busier times, involved with other members. Whether it's in their own projects or they're helping me out with my projects. One of the big things that came out of that was my involvement with Radio Free Satan. Mm-hmm. So we can get into that now or later.
Hey, yeah, please go right into it. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that. And also, the podcast that you would, I think, yeah. So definitely, please talk about Radio Free Satan. That'd be great.
So Radio Free Satan is a network of podcasts. It was actually one of the first podcast networks out there. This was well before, the serial podcast that blew up and made podcasts mainstream, well before, all the other shows. But this is a network of shows by members of the Church of Satan. I would say about half of the shows are music oriented. And again, because we started well before things like Spotify and things like that, this was a way of Church of Satan members putting out shows that showcased their own musical interests. And it varied from metal, and it does vary, from metal to opera, classical, punk, goth, industrial. I have my own show on there called Chaos Sedated, which is ambient and experimental music. And it's just curated shows. And we also have non-music shows, which are like commentary. We've got one of our more popular shows is The Devil's Mischief, which is a comedy show by Magister Bill M. Oh, okay. He calls it comedy not for the masses. So he digs into his huge archive. It's incredible archive of comedy. And he pulls these hidden gems and also classics and well-known pieces of comedy and puts it together, and he presents it in a satanic perspective. So that's The Devil's Mischief. And we also network with The Accusation Party, which is Magister Paradise's more political and social commentary podcast, where he takes current events, current news items, and he analyzes them from a satanic perspective and from a accusatory satanic perspective. Something away from the left-right dynamics of usual mainstream commentary. So there's that. There's Confessions of a Wicked Witch. There's so many shows. We have Dark Whispers, which is a kind of interview podcast, and they deal with all kinds of issues, personal and impersonal. So there's a lot going on Radio Free Satan. So when I got involved with that network, they needed an upgrade. They were since they were very early in on the podcast technology, and they were operating on some older platforms. So I saw what was going on. I was a DJ and doing Chaos Sedated, and I saw, well, I have experience in technology and web development. So I thought, okay, well, I'll step in and upgrade the website. So I did, and I brought it up to the latest technology in podcasting, and I continue to do that. I experiment with things to try to keep us on the cutting edge of things. And from there, from my show Chaos Sedated, I got to network with a lot of musicians, and also with my history, in the underground scene in New York. I networked with a lot of musicians and record labels and things like that. And I got in touch with this website called Heathen Harvest. And Heathen Harvest is one of the longest running. Here's my cat.
I saw the tail poke up. I knew that wasn't yours. So.
Yeah, Heathen Harvest is one of the longest running neo-folk industrial websites out there right now, and I got to be a writer for them. I did interviews and reviews, and then I started doing my own podcast on their website as well, called The Forest Passage, which is more. Whereas Chaos Sedated on Radio Free Satan is pure music. It's just, I would say, a mixtape format. The Forest Passage is actually me and a co-host, and we talk about what's going on in underground music from different perspectives. I come from a more experimental, industrial perspective. He's more of a black metal guy, and he keeps up on the latest in black metal music. So we kind of attack things from different angles, and we have guests, and we interview guests and things like that. So it's just a different vehicle for my podcasting hobby.
And the Black Flame, is that something that people can subscribe to, or is that only for members of the Church of Satan?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good point. So it's kind of funny because the Black Flame, like I said, was very influential on me as the printed magazine. But the printed version has ceased many, many years ago. There are some back issues out there online, but we have transitioned the Black Flame to a web property. So it's on our website. If you go to the Church of Satan, if you go to churchofsatan.com and you go to news, you'll see the Black Flame. And we take submissions from members of the organization, but it's open to everybody. It's a website; anybody could go to it. But we focus on Satanism as applied as a lifestyle, and so we'll talk about musicians. I do interviews with musicians. Like I just posted one with the band Ghost, not the metal bands, but the electronic synthwave band that I'm really into. And he recently put out an album that is completely dedicated to the theme of, well, like a variation of Paradise Lost, The Fall of Lucifer. And he plays heavily with satanic themes. And I think for the longest time, nobody really approached him about it. But when I took notice, I approached him in detail about Satanism and where Satanism came into play in his lifestyle, in his philosophies. And he came out and said, yeah, absolutely. Satanism and the Church of Satan definitely influenced me. And he was very, very happy to have somebody actually acknowledge that, kind of see through the symbolism and get to what really influenced him. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do with the Black Flame is attack music, well, not attack, but approach music, art, culture, from a satanic perspective and kind of bring out the satanic elements from all those things. We have articles in there, about brewing, about beer brewing, and seeing beer brewing as an act of ritual. Mm-hmm. And that's out there by Reverend Adam Campbell. We have some articles on magic and how to appropriately use, say, the Leviathan compass, if some people are familiar with that idea from satanic rituals and the satanic witch. We got Nathan Gray. He's got an article on there about performance as a satanic ritual act. We have an article on philosophy, Satanism as a philosophy, and going through a kind of Socratic method of defining Satanism as a philosophy. Mm-hmm. We got an article on depression and how to deal with depression as a Satanist. So rather than, our regular newsfeed are just announcements, things that our members are doing to bring awareness to it. But the Black Flame is more a place where our members can flesh out ideas about Satanism and how it applies to their lifestyles.
Okay. Yeah, because I think I actually went through, so the Black Flame is actually more of an online type of news feed. Yeah, mm-hmm. Okay, because I went through that, so, okay. So it's not like a printed magazine anymore.
No, there's going to be a printed kind of journal called The Cloven Hoof, and this is based out of the actual official Church of Satan newsletter called The Cloven Hoof. That also was active until somewhat recently. But that's transitioning to a journal format, and I believe that's going to be membership priority. Mm-hmm. So it'll be announced to our members when that's ready, and they can order that. And if they're, if no one else is if we go through, a few cycles of letting people know, and there's still some available, we may make it public. Something like that. I don't know, but that's still in the process. So if you're looking for something printed, there's the Cloven Hoof, and there's going to be a printing of the Satanic Scriptures, which is Magus Peter Gilmore's book on Satanism. So that actually went out of print a little while ago, and there were some issues with the printers. So, but those are being resolved. So we should. Early 2017, we should see a new printing of that, and you could save some money because that's going for hundreds of dollars on eBay right now.
Oh, wow. So yeah. It's very popular, huh?
Yeah, very popular, especially now, I think. People are hearing about Satanism in the media and things like that, so people are looking for the Church of Satan's take on Satanism and our philosophy, since we've been defining it for 50 years, Right. They want to know what's the latest on that, and Magus Gilmore's book is highly sought after for that.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I just wanted to comment on what you were talking about earlier about how you had cut school and went to go and study. I was laughing because that is exactly what I did when I would cut high school, and I would go to the library, and that's where I started learning about mythology. And that's actually what got me into studying witchcraft and the occult. I was studying these mythologies and finding about these wizards and these gods and goddesses, and that's what led me into studying witchcraft. And so I thought it was really funny you had mentioned that you did the same thing. You kind of you cut school and you taught yourself, and that is what I did. That's really funny. That kind of ingrained independence that so many of us hold,
Yeah. I mean, I still kept up with my schoolwork, and I skirted by high school.
Yeah, I did too.
But
it's amazing.
I actually didn't go to libraries. I spent a lot of time in Barnes and Noble. In New York City, there are plenty of Barnes and Nobles around there. These big, back when people read books. But there were these huge Barnes and Nobles in Manhattan. I would go to them and hide out there because there were truancy cops and stuff like that. That really ingrained kind of instinctual survival techniques, I guess, when I was young. But yeah, that was what I did. And I went to these indie bookstores too and kind of checked out the more occult literature, and I use occult in the terms of, hidden literature. But I know you went into the definition of occult in a past episode in detail.
Right.
Well, it's really funny because when I was younger in Berkeley, you know, there was, you know, like Matt Groening, there was a big underground comic book. This is when comic books were like really peaking. There was a lot of people were starting to redefine traditional comic books like The Dark Knight, and then you had people. There was a lot of underground comics like Matt Groening, some other people like that. And so there was kind of like this underground scene, sort of similar like it sounds like in New York. It sounds like you were more involved in the underground music scene. And
That's right.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but in Berkeley there was kind of like this underground publishing sort of movement. And so it's really interesting how a lot of people were just kind of like, even I'm sure you've heard of Maximum Rock and Roll, right? The magazine?
Yeah, I have. Mm-hmm.
And it started out like photocopies at Kinko's, you know? That's how it started out. And that's how a lot of these kind of underground books and comics started out, was people writing them out in pen, going to Kinko's, photocopying them, stapling them together, and selling them or giving them away to people. So it's really funny.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have a bookshelf here. Yeah, with like, there's like Not Like Most, which was a satanic zine, Bloodfire zine. So a lot of this stuff was highly influential on me, the zine culture. Like I said, because it was just independence. It was people doing things on their own accord and applying Satanism in a variety of ways.
Right. Yeah, because nowadays, if you want to get recognized or try to become mainstream, you have to sell yourself out to these companies, and then these companies try to change your direction and make you more mainstream, or even maybe you're in a position where you can't even afford to become part of the mainstream because it's expensive to become part of the mainstream. And so I think especially in that era, people just made their own path. They're like, you know what? Even a lot of record labels, they recorded stuff in like a little tiny studio and burned them up. You know, at that time there was still tape. There weren't CDs. But then when CDs came out, people could make their own CDs and go out there and give them to people and sell them. And it was great. It was like kind of like, if the mainstream isn't going to accept us, we're just going to create our own path, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that you mentioned is publishing, independent publishing, underground publishing. And actually one of the projects that I help support and I collaborate with is, Underworld Amusements, which is a satanic, egoist, misanthropologist, indie book publisher and seller. You can check that out at underworldamusements.com. I actually have a few of their books here in my stack behind me that they often cite and that I use as a resource for some of my writing. So I highly recommend them. They have some books on Satanism. They have the Spanish language translation of the Satanic Scriptures, of Peter Gilmore's Satanic Scriptures. And I believe that's where the new print of the Satanic Scriptures, the English version, will appear. But you could also check out Infernalia by Michael Rose. You can check out some books on who we call de facto Satanists. So these poets, philosophers, writers who were around before Satanism was defined, but they would have been Satanists if it was defined at the time. Maybe not self-acknowledged, but they lived and wrote from a very satanic perspective. So a lot of that is available there.
And I'm sorry, you had mentioned, what was it, infernal.com? What was that?
That was underworldamusements.com.
Oh yeah, but there was another one that you had mentioned. Was it Infernal?
Infernalia was the book.
Infernalia.
Yeah, I have it here somewhere. I don't know.
Is that a publisher?
No, that's a book that's put out by Underworld Amusements.
Oh, okay. I misheard you then. I thought you said it was infernal.com. So let me see.
No.
There's a question here. Let me see. Would you say that those who hear Okay, so the question is, would you say that those who hear the words ego, selfish, etc., and think that Satanism is sociopathic are looking at it in a way that's been muddled by rational comparisons to those words?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if I understand the question correctly, I would say, yeah, I think they're...
You want me to repeat it?
No, it's okay. But I think that a lot of that comes. I think a lot of that comes from people who try to misrepresent Satanists. Mm-hmm. So there becomes this kind of parroting effect. You know, somebody has an axe to grind against Satanists. They describe them in a certain way, and then other people just parrot that idea,
right,
without actually referring to actual Satanists themselves, you know, or referring to members of the Church of Satan themselves, or interacting with them, or reaching out to them to confirm or deny these things. You know, I'm not trying to whitewash egoism or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You know, that is definitely part of what we are. You know, elitism, things like that, meritocracy, stratification. Those things are very crucial parts of our philosophy, and I won't deny that. But I don't think that just naturally implies or just immediately follows that the person's an asshole. Or maybe they are an asshole. Maybe they are a jerk because, you know, the world around them deserves that. I don't know.
Right. Well, it's kind of funny. It's kind of like what we were talking about the last time about the shark. It's like that is its nature. And that's how I've felt about friendships, relationships. Like you get into a relationship with somebody, you find out that they're a jerk or they're an asshole. It's kind of like, yeah, you could try to change them or just understand that that's just who they are. And if your personality doesn't fit with that person, why try to make it work? You know, people just, you know, if people are following their true nature and who they are, they're going to acquire or they're going to be drawn towards people who they feel comfortable with, who they can parrot. And if you come across somebody who's just living their life and you don't get along with them, that's just the way it is. You know, it's not necessarily their fault.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I think some people have this instinct to try to always be the good guy. You know, they want to always present themselves as the good guy, the hero in the story. And they want to make sure that everything that they're attracted to supports that idea. So they'll try to change Satanism to be like a good guy philosophy, or what LaVey would have called try to put on a good guy badge, and try to show how much of a good guy they are. But Satanism is not that. You know, Satanism is being in tune with your own nature, and for some people that's going to be the villain, and that's going to be the shark. You know, just is that person good or bad? I don't know. It's based on their perspective. Based on their perspective, no, but on someone else's subjective perspective, yes. I mean, it could be. I mean, for some people, I'm a super villain to them, evil person, and maybe rightly so. I don't know. But for others, not so much. You know, I have a very tight circle of friends and very close circle of friends, and it's maybe we're all villains, though. I don't know.
Well, let's put it this way: do you have a death ray in your underground in your underground lair?
I don't have a death ray, but I have other weapons.
I think that describes a supervillain, is when you have a death ray in your underground lair, you're definitely a supervillain.
I wouldn't turn it down, though. You know, if it was out there, I don't know.
Hey, to be honest, a death ray can come in handy. You know, just mess with me, I got a death ray. Let me see. Okay, so we got a follow-up question from the same person.
Okay.
In other words, people who always attach a negative association to the word selfish, etc., they look at it in extremes. Okay, so I guess maybe he's just commenting on it. But, yeah.
Yeah, and also because, I mean, we have a a society, a culture that is that sees selfishness as evil still. So, I think we can see Christianity on the decline. Now, as a religion, as a spirituality, it's on the decline. Mm-hmm. But the cultural elements of Christianity are not. And I think those are actually on the rise. And you have this culture of altruism, of selflessness, of universal compassion. It's kind of a cyclical thing. It happened during the 60s, and Satanism was formed as a revolt against that, as a reaction against that kind of culture. And we're seeing a return of that kind of culture now. So Satanism is here to swing the pendulum in the other direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree. I find that, I agree with you. I see you can definitely kind of look at history and the way culture goes, and you can sort of see how, when you have an extreme of a pendulum, it kind of goes all the way to the farther point, and then eventually it kind of comes down and meets a middle ground.
I mean, that's where change happens. Change happens in the extremes. So, there's pros and cons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that I know we talked about last time was the concept of how Satanists perceive the world, because I think there's a lot of people out there who believe that Satanists actually worship a form of Satan, or they worship that idea of the deity. Could you speak about that a little bit?
Oh, so the idea is that Satanists see Satan as a symbol. We are a atheistic philosophy, and we see Satan as a means of encapsulating our understanding of the world around us, and encapsulating our egotistical nature, and projecting that into a symbol, into a metaphor. So we don't worship Satan. We say Satan is an embodiment of our innermost desires and just instincts and things like that. So we don't acknowledge any kind of external deities overlooking our lives and influencing our lives or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So it's pretty much an atheistic belief. You don't actually believe in the persona of the devil or of Satan. All right. Well, let me see. We're at it's about 12:15 right now, so we've been talking for about an hour. Let me see. We don't have any other questions.
Okay.
So let me see. I know that we touched on some of the social media, the Black Flame and the Heathen Harvest, and also the podcasts. So I'll put links to those below if people want to check them out. And trying to think if there's anything else that I think we pretty much touched everything.
I think last time we talked about a bit of those kind of people claiming to have been members of the Church of Satan.
Yes, definitely, yeah. There was a couple of people, Mark Passio, who had claimed to be a member of the Church of Satan. Then also another gentleman by the name of Bill Schnoebelen, who had claimed to be members of the Church of Satan. Yeah.
So the thing is that these people, they present Satan. You could easily do research on Satanism and kind of get the general ideas and the general principles of the Church of Satan and things like that. But it's obvious that they then take that and twist it into their own agendas, and they either, whether it's Christian or whether it's conspiratorial or whatever it is that they're trying to promote, but it's these people have I think the mistake that they make is that they think the Church of Satan isn't real, that we're not a real organization, and that we're not going to follow up and look them up and say, actually, no, you never were a member. And even that aside, just based on the kind of nonsense that they spew, it's clear that they're not, they never were really affiliated with the Church of Satan or Satanism. Because they'll make these crazy accusations that, that we do like ritual sacrifices or things like that, or that we're some kind of Illuminati, trying to, push, kind of a new world order onto the system. And not that those things would be bad, I don't know, but no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, well, I just find it funny because, and it's always, whenever I hear people talking about like that, you'll hear things that they say, and you're like, wait a second, that's impossible, or that's completely ridiculous, and so that's why I pick up on that, and I know especially with Passio, he was talking about, and it's always that what happens is they talk about the Church of Satan, and then they say, well, I was a part of it, and I know that and then it leads into the Illuminati and the New World Order. And that's when you're like, okay, all right, they're full of shit. And I know, like, I know I spoke with, is it Magus Gilmore? Is that his title?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When I emailed Magus Gilmore, he said that they had records going back 50 years. So, it's like if anybody claims that they are a member of that group, you have records going back 50 years that you can find out if somebody was a member or not. So,
right.
And oddly enough, I mean, there's a lot of people who call themselves eclectic Wicca nowadays, which is, they have every right to, they've studied it, and, they bought books and they want to identify themselves as that. That's fine. But there are a branch of traditional Wiccans, and those groups you can actually vet somebody and find out if they are legitimate. And I think that's an important function of, organization. So, like the Church of Satan, if somebody says that they're a member of the Church of Satan, you can find out whether or not they actually are, or they aren't. Because anybody can claim to be whatever, but
right.
As to if they actually are that or not is another question.
Yeah, and I think some people get the impression that we are kind of being territorial about the idea, or that we're trying to own Satanism. But the thing is that we come at this from experience. We lived through the Satanic Panic, and we know what it's like for other people to try to co-opt the philosophy and try to turn it into something that it's not, and turn it into something that's criminal or that's against Satanic principles. You had accusations of people being in the Church of Satan who were killing animals or breeding babies and things like that, and that actually took hold. That actually took hold of the media and politics, of law enforcement, and it really affected the day-to-day life of a lot of Satanists. So that's the reason why, we have a set definition of who we are, of what we are, of our philosophy, and stay true to that. Because, maybe in the earlier days of the Church of Satan, they would have been a little, I know LaVey was less strict about those things. He's like, if people want to do what they do, whatever. But that created this kind of monster situation that we had to deal with, and we don't want to deal with that again. Right. So I think we've learned from that and try to apply our policies and our outlook to better serve our own interests and to better represent Satanism to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think there are people out there who believe that Satanists do sacrifice animals, or they are into sacrificing babies, and I think the Satanic Panic was one of this was back in the 80s, like you touched on, that people really believe this, and even today sometimes there are people who believe that this happens.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Anton LaVey was a photographer for the San Francisco Police Department. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, he was a journalist. He was a freelance photographer, and yeah, some of his work went to the San Francisco Police Department. That's right.
Yeah, and so I think he had sort of the ability to kind of talk to them, like when they were saying, "Hey, well, is this satanic?" And he sort of he was in a position to say, "No, that's not. That's just somebody trying to make it up. This is what it actually is." You know?
Well, actually, his experience doing that was prior to the formation of the Church of Satan, and actually, yeah. So he was a crime scene photographer, but it relates to Satanism in that he saw the ugly side of human nature. He saw domestic violence. He saw the results of domestic violence. He saw the results of jealousy and counterproductive pride, and just the extreme bestial nature of humans. And he saw it made him reject death in a way, in that, you know, he recognized, okay, I don't, you know, death is the finale. There's nothing after that. So we must enjoy the life that we have. So I think that's the perspective that it gave him, and led him to formulating Satanism and the Church of Satan. Through his relationship with the police department, I think there were members of the police department in the Church of Satan, and they were helpful in combating misconceptions of Satanism. When the Satanic Panic happened, that would have been 20 years or so after the formation of the Church of Satan. There were definitely still members who were involved in law enforcement that helped combat that, but it was mainly through our representatives out there in the going out there to media, doing interviews and things like that to really combat that. And it still happens to this day. I know that Magus Gilmore, he is regularly talking to law enforcement, to academics. He's actually appeared as a character I don't know the right term, as a witness in court to define Satanism in cases where the defendant was, you know, trying to present their actions as satanic and they weren't. So he would have been somebody to speak up for the actual philosophy. So that is still part of our function as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've seen some of these shows, like the Geraldo Rivera special on the Satanic Panic, and I mean it's just, I actually kind of see a similar thing kind of showing up today in some of the people who really want to influence our society, is where people get caught up in the idea or the concept of guilt, rather than actually looking into whether or not somebody is actually guilty of. So it's kind of like a witch hunt over again, where people are more interested in how many people say that so and so is guilty, rather than whether or not somebody is actually guilty. You know, just because 50 people say you are guilty of something doesn't mean that you actually did it. And that's very frightening, that this kind of mob mentality can take over, you know?
Yeah, that is definitely the danger of herd mentality, mob mentality, and that's the kind of thing that we Satanists would work against. Or would use it to our advantage. I mean, but we would not want to become part of that mob or part of that herd. You know, I think Satanists should always be outliers. Maybe exert their influence as an outlier, you know, as an outsider, and manipulate things in the environment or in the socio-political arenas, but always just be aware of the dangers of the masses.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. All right. Don't see any more questions. I'm hoping that I hope I got that, because last time there was a little problem of the title of it, but this time I corrected it because I'm seeing it live here. So.
Okay, good.
Well, all right, Raul. I can't think of anything else. I think we pretty much touched on most stuff.
Okay.
I know we talked about the social media. People can definitely go to the Church of Satan. That's probably the best place to go to find these other links. And I will also put the links to definitely the podcast you had mentioned before, Heathen Harvest, the Black Flame, Radio Free Satan.
That's right.
And I'll put those links below. And definitely if they want to find out more, that was the other question I had for you, which we didn't answer before, but I think it's a very good question. But if somebody was interested in finding out more information about the Church of Satan, if they felt it was something that resonated with them, how would they go about finding more information or maybe hooking up with people who are in the Church of Satan?
Well, obviously the primary source would be the website. So just churchofsatan.com. But if you actually want to interact with other members of the Church of Satan or Satanists, we do have a unofficial Facebook group. I think you could search for it. It's called The Church of Satan, and there are several thousand members in that. And that's moderated by members of the Church of Satan, but it's an unofficial group. So there's definitely people in there who do not represent our philosophy or may even be against our philosophy for whatever masochistic reason they're in there for. But so if you want to join that, feel free. We do have you could always contact the Church of Satan. If you have any specific questions, there's an email contact form on the website that you can shoot off emails. We have an administrative team of individuals who take these questions and, either answer them or forward them to the people that you have questions about. Or we're active on Facebook. We have a verified Facebook page for the Church of Satan. And we also have a verified Twitter account for the Church of Satan. And you can tell that they are us because they'll have on Twitter, it's a blue check mark because you have the verified status. Right. And on Facebook, you'll see a gray check mark verifying that we are, who we say we are. And if you don't have those things, they're not us.
Then it's not legit.
Yeah. So make sure that you see the verified mark. And you could always interact in the comments there, or if you're on Twitter, I think we're less active there, but somebody may see that. So we have different avenues, and I encourage people to research the material. If they really do want to join the Church of Satan, we have a website, a webpage on the site with instructions on how to join. I encourage people to do the research to really ask themselves if that's something that they want to do. I'm not proselytizing. I'm not going out there trying to get people to join. I make people more skeptical about joining than they should. Just because I sincerely think that that should be something that you really want to do and you feel like it's something that you can get something out of.
Right.
And on the other hand, there are some people who join the Church of Satan not really to join, but they just want to. There's also a donate button. They want to just throw some support, say, hey, thanks for doing what you do, but I'm going about my way, and here's my means of showing that support. So there's different things. I don't know why people would want to do that. I mean, that's okay. That's fine. It's great. I mean, some people are happy to do that, but I think joining something. I mean, me personally, I'm not a joiner. I really think hard before joining anything. So. I think people should have the same kind of consideration.
Right, and absolutely, and I completely agree with you. I think that you should definitely, because like you had mentioned, there's this concept that people have of the Church of Satan, and maybe the reality of what it is may not exactly resonate with their perception of it. So they definitely want to do some research, find out if it's something that really resonates with them, and then maybe look into it. So no, I think that's actually very good advice, because that helps you as the individual, and it helps the group. Because if you have people who are in the group who are not really doing what it is that they should be doing, then it's not benefiting either one of you. So let me see. We have one more question here.
Okay.
They are asking, some people think that Satanism is a form of paganism. Could you explain the differences and or similarities?
Well, I mean, maybe you can talk to paganism more accurately than me, but from my understanding, Satanism is a very specific philosophy. It's defined in the Satanic Bible, in the works of Anton LaVey, in the works of Magus Gilmore, on our website. It's very defined, clear, what Satanism is. Paganism is a more umbrella term of the pre-Christian religion. So, you'll have all kinds of paganism, Celtic paganism, Germanic paganism. You could even have like Asiatic or Oriental paganism, and so that's more of an umbrella term of just general pre-Christian religions. I mean, is that right?
I think you're spot on right there.
And also, I would say, I'm sorry, but also I didn't want to discount that there are also modern religions that are influenced or based off of those pre-Christian ideas, like Asatru and things like that. I don't know if they would be considered paganism, but they have a pagan aspect to it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that the word paganism, in my opinion, is becoming a very clumsy word. The reason why I say that is because when you actually step back and you actually look at paganism, you have different definitions of it. And yes, underneath that umbrella term, you have all these various groups that would fall under paganism, like Celtic paganism, Asatru, all these various things fall under paganism. And I think maybe in like the 60s, 70s, I think especially Isaac Bonewitz, I don't know if you know who he is, but he kind of coined the term of neo-paganism, which was like new paganism. And I think that kind of gets a little closer, because what people who call themselves pagans today, at least in my opinion, is not the same paganism that their ancestors may have practiced before Christianity became the main religion. So what we would consider to be paganism today would be more of kind of like a reconstructionist of paganism. Like let's say Asatru. What they're basically trying to do is recreate what they believe that their ancestors practiced before Christianity came in. So I think that the way that you described it is spot on. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Satanism doesn't really have, you're not trying to reconstruct or base anything on any particular culture, or you're not really trying to recreate Satanism from ancient pagan practices. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, we would incorporate some of the metaphors or symbols in ritual and maybe in some of our creative projects or aesthetics, but we're not trying to revive those religions per se. And obviously because we don't believe in external deities, we don't really believe in the existence of past external deities either. But I am open to the ideas of, like, say, Jungian, like, archetypes and things like that these pagans may have created or may have formed some kind of archetypes that live on in some ways, in terms of psychological concepts, of mental concepts and things like that. I'm open to that kind of thinking and playing with that kind of thing in ritual or in art. But Satanism is very much, since we are fundamentally a secular philosophy, we do have that freedom to kind of pull from different sources, which include, pagan ideas.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I know we had talked about before was the concept of using ritual as psychodrama and practicing magic in Satanism. Could you speak on that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So within Satanism, there's the idea of magic, and it's defined in two ways. There's lesser magic, which is just day-to-day social engineering. The way you present yourself, the aesthetic that you have, the way you manipulate others in order to kind of bend situation to your advantage. So that's lesser magic. And then there's greater magic, which is ritual, ceremony. And in my opinion, I think there's kind of two kinds of greater magic. There's the greater magic, which is kind of ceremonial. You do this for weddings, baptisms, to mark milestones in life. I had a satanic wedding, and so that is in a way an act of greater magic. And some others, if you read the satanic rituals, there are some rituals in there that are they're not done in order to grant some kind of wish or to create some kind of external effect, but they're to create internal effects. They're to put you in a certain mindset, to put you in a certain perspective, to get in tune with your animal instincts. I think that's the point of Das Tier Drama, which is a Germanic kind of influence on Germanic pagan principles. So to kind of return to like an animal state of nature. So that's one idea of greater magic. The other is the destruction ritual, the lust ritual, the compassion ritual. And those actually you want to kind of have some kind of effect outside of yourself. Whether it's a curse to get rid of somebody who's harmed you or somebody you love, or if it's lust, which is, attract somebody you're interested in, or compassion, which can be for yourself or it could be for somebody else. It's, to give assistance. And in my perspective, I do see the psychological elements of that. You're doing these things to kind of, in terms of, say, a curse, trying to relieve baggage. You may have this immense hatred for a person that it's almost getting in the way of your day-to-day life, becoming a happy, productive person. Mm-hmm. And you can do a destruction ritual to curse them, to visually destroy or mentally destroy this person. And then that'll be as some kind of catharsis for those kinds of emotions. Now, if, a few days later the person gets in a car accident, well, I don't know what happened. We don't know. Something could have happened. I don't know, but don't feel guilty about it. You wanted this person destroyed. They're out of the picture. Take responsibility for that. Even if it's purely psychological, acknowledge that, so that in the future that kind of catharsis works for you. Because if you don't, if you just say, oh, that's just pure coincidence, hogwash, whatever. Right. And then, something like in this kind of situation happens again where you get this, the ritual is not going to work for you. And you're going to have to find some other means of letting go, if at all. So we kind of leave the door open to the unknown and what could happen as a result of these rituals. But, even if it's just purely mental, psychological, I think there's a great benefit to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you. Let's see, we had one more question. Okay. So would it be safe to say that paganism is predominantly spiritual and Satanism is completely non-spiritual?
I can speak for Satanism and say, yes, Satanism is not spiritual. I cannot speak for pagans or paganism because there could be a variety on that.
Yeah, and definitely, and I think we did this the last time, and I think it's good to do it again. Is that I am really speaking for myself. There's no way I can speak for all pagans. Paganism is such a huge group. It's such a wide umbrella. It covers so much. I can't speak for every single pagan, and I would not want to speak for all pagans because I feel that they have their own voice. They can speak up for themselves. But in my experience, there's a very wide spectrum of paganism. For myself, I'm sort of like the atheistic, agnostic end of the spectrum, and then you have people who are on the end of the spectrum who are like almost monotheistic or polytheistic. Then you have pantheistic, then you have animistic. And so it can be very, there's a temperature no matter which pool of the paganism you're in, and it really depends upon what type of paganism that you are into for it to be religious or spiritual. So
yeah. And then kind of in the vein of what you were saying a moment ago, I speak for myself. from my perspective on Satanism and my application of Satanism, I can, as a reverend in the Church of Satan, I can speak on the fundamental principles of Satanism and the Church of Satan and a little bit on its functions. But I cannot speak for other members of the organization, especially when it comes down to, just my aesthetics or my opinions on things and politics and things like that. Those are individualistic, and that's very important to the Church of Satan, is to make sure that individuals are free to apply Satanism however they want. And that's going to vary and sometimes even conflict and contrast with other members. So I just want to make that point clear. One other thing, though, is if you want to see Satanists in the world, on the Church of Satan website, there's an events page. If you go to news and you go to events, there's a calendar there, and we're always posting concerts, book signings, exhibits, all kinds of things going on by members of the Church of Satan. So if you checked out the events calendar, there's something going on in your neighborhood or in your area, you can go there and then see, Satanists in action, doing stuff out there. It may not be explicitly satanic. It may just be a rock concert or something like that. But, you may see how these people are applying Satanism, and you may see other Satanists in the crowd and maybe have a chance to interact. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But that's another resource for you.
Mm-hmm. And do they wear a big button that says, "I'm a Satanist"?
Chances are not. Maybe if they're a performer, maybe. But yeah, Satanism can be applied in so many different ways. That's not always the case. Like, for example, a few weeks ago, we had a big event here at a tiki festival. There was like a tiki Polynesian pulp culture festival in Southern California, and there were many Satanists involved. I actually hung out with Blanche Barton, which is Anton LaVey's last partner. She was there, and we were watching a satanic performer. He was on stage, on the main stage, playing a church. He was a Church of Satan member, Jimmy Psycho. He was playing in front of this sold-out convention. So these are the kind of things that Satanists are doing. It's not always explicitly satanic, but you could say in the tiki culture, it's carnal. It's about indulgence. It's about drinking, imbibing. Beautiful, voluptuous women and strong, confident men, and that's those are very, very core satanic principles, and they're there, and that's where Satanists are going to be attracted to. Not always, doom and gloom black metal shows. So right. we love life, so that's important.
Right. And the person who's asking the questions, DL says, "Great answers, thanks, guys." So,
welcome.
You are definitely welcome. So I like that concept of that you have events that are going on, and like you say, it's not necessarily like satanic, but in a sense it is satanic because it's really kind of showing the element of what it is to be a Satanist.
And one big event that we have going on is in December 2nd in Florida. Mm-hmm. We have the book release exhibition and pre-party for The Devil's Reign 2, which is actually the second book of the Devil's Reign series. It could be, I don't know if there's more coming, but it could be. But this is a book that is curated by Magus Peter Gilmore of Satanic Art. And the theme of this next, I think, book and also the gallery is going to be kind of psychedelic art. And so there's going to be, I think December 2nd is the pre-party show, which with the Electric Hellfire Club is playing, and the Nathan Gray Collective, Asmodeus X. And so I think those are Church of Satan members, and they're going to be performing, especially Electric Hellfire Club. That's a very well-known satanic industrial rock band, and that's going to be, I believe, his final performance. It's a one-off show for sure. It's not part of a tour. So if people are in the area and they want to check that out, go check that out. And there's definitely going to be plenty of Satanists in the crowd and around doing all kinds of things. So if you're interested, check it out. Head to Florida.
Awesome. And I have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. One of the questions is, you had mentioned Blanche Barton being
Anton LaVey's last high priestess. Is that correct?
Oh, well, she was his last partner, and she became the high priestess after he passed. He passed that title on to her, and then she passed on the head title to Magus Gilmore and his wife Pagan Andromeda.
Oh, okay. So I don't know if you can answer this, and if you can't, that's not a problem. But is there a structure like there is a high priest and a high priestess? Or is there one, or is it just a high priest or a high priestess? And the reason why I ask is because I'm trying to relate it. I'm trying to find out if it's, anyhow, I'm just wondering if it's like Wicca.
Oh, well, yeah, there is definitely, there's definitely a hierarchy. I mean, there's a high priest position, which is Magus Peter H. Gilmore, and that's what we call the 5th degree. And there's also the high priestess, which is Peggy Andromeda, which is also the 5th degree. And you've got the 4th degree, which is underneath them, is the magisters and the magistras. And these are people who have successfully applied Satanism in the real world and have established themselves in positions of influence and independence based on satanic philosophy. And this is and they make up, along with the priesthood, the Council of Nine and the priesthood of Mendes, which is kind of more organizational elements of the Church of Satan. And beneath the magisters and the magistras, you have the priests and the priestesses, the priesthood, and these are representatives of the Church of Satan. These are people who have proven themselves as understanding the philosophy and have the ability to present to the media, do interviews like this, and also creative types, musicians, artists, things like that, who represent Satanism in their art. And so through their art, they are kind of propagating, they're presenting Satanism to the public in a accurate way. And then below them, you have witches and warlocks, which are people who are kind of on the way to becoming successful members of their fields and understand Satanism. And then you have below that the active membership and the registered members. So I kind of went in the opposite order that I usually do, but registered members are just people who join, just send in the application and say, I am a registered member of the Church of Satan, and they don't really interact any more than that. If you want to interact with the organization, you want to step up, you become an active member. And there's a separate registration. There's a separate application for that to kind of gauge that you actually understand the philosophy and that you know what you're doing, you know what you're getting yourself into. You're not. We don't want to give the impression that you're going to join the Church of Satan and immediately get set up with like weekly meetings with at your local at your local building or whatever. There's nothing like that. So just to make sure that you understand what's involved. And so those are the active members. Going up the rankings in the Church of Satan is not something you do explicitly. It's kind of said that if you have to ask how to move up, you won't move up. We want members to go out there in the real world, whether it's as an artist, as an academic, as a professional, in your career or whatever it is that you're doing. Go out there and apply Satanism in the real world. Be successful. Influence your peers. Influence those that are outside of Satanism. In my opinion, I think that's very important to kind of create your own spheres of influence that may intersect with Satanists and Satanism, but also intersect with those outside of Satanism. And because that way you are actually presenting Satanism as a living being, as an actual person. And as you do that, keep in touch with the organization. Let us know what you're up to, what you're doing. If you need to collaborate with others or you need to bounce ideas, we're here. You can network with us. And as we recognize those things, you may be elevated. And if you want to present Satanism to the media or something like that, and you have media experience, you may become an agent or you may become a priest or something like that. That's how I came about it. I never asked for this role or anything like that.
They just kind of threw you in it.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah, it's like I was just doing things. I was doing concerts. I was doing events. I was doing Radio Free Satan. I was publishing articles. I was worked with some books, and I kept in touch with the central office, and they recognized me, and they gave me some small opportunities to present Satanism, and those worked successfully, and those were impressed them enough to give me more opportunities, and then they gave me priesthood.
Okay. And then the other question I had for you was the holidays. Now, I know that in some forms of paganism, they celebrate, the traditional 8 wheels or 8 seasons of the wheel of the year. Do Satanists celebrate those, or do they have their own holidays, or how does that work?
Well, we would say the most important holiday is your birthday, since we are our own gods and we are selfish people. Like, yeah, your birthday is the highest holiday. But on top of, well, besides that, you also have the equinoxes and the solstice, tongue-tied. Yeah,
it's a tough one.
Yeah, I think this past one, there was the autumn, the fall, the equinox, right? So, so that's an important. We celebrate the transition of time, the transition of the seasons. It kind of it reinforces the idea of change, of stratification. Those kinds of concepts. Those are important to us. We've got Walpurgisnacht, which is April 30th. Which is it's kind of a celebratory night, the night of the witches. Kind of go out there and we may have special events on that day. I know we've had several big, I'm going to say, I hate the word gatherings, but we had big events on those days to celebrate significant milestones in the organization. So there's those days. Yuletide, I like Christmas. I put up a Christmas tree, a Yuletide tree. I decorate, I give gifts, I understand, there's the Christian, the Christian element of that, but that's also pagan, that comes from pagan tradition. So I focus more on that kind of stuff when I celebrate it myself. So it's up to each Satanist to determine, what's important to them, how they want to celebrate these milestones in life and throughout the seasons, the years. But first and foremost, birthday and everything else comes after.
So it sounds kind of like maybe it's not necessarily official in like the Church of Satan's holidays, but if you want to celebrate those, it sounds like that you can do that. It doesn't sound like there's any kind of a conflict, anything like that.
Yeah. You won't find a Church of Satan member petitioning, their employer for like an official holiday. No.
Yeah, that's funny. It's really funny about it, especially if you look at most, not all, but most Christian holidays, how they also coincide with pagan holidays. And you kind of get two sides of the camp. One that kind of wants to take the Christian element out of the pagan, then you kind of get the Christians who want to take the pagan element out, et cetera, et cetera. And I kind of like that. I mean, like, I like Christmas too. My family, definitely they celebrate Christmas, and I enjoy Christmas too. And I think it's an evolution of how our holidays have come to today, especially in America. And I think it's nice to recognize them, but I'm not interested in whipping out a sharp knife and cutting out, okay, what is Christian and what is pagan? I like to have the understanding of that it's become a symbiosis of the two. And that's just the way it is,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I don't want to keep you too long, Raul. But I'm enjoying what we've been discussing.
Okay.
Let's see.
Questions?
No, pretty much. Those were the questions we had. Doesn't look like we have any more. But I know that there is a slight delay between when we talk and then when it hits YouTube. So maybe some questions will pop up. But I know that we talked to... I'm sorry, go ahead.
I believe like early on in our conversation, there were some people asking questions. I don't know, did we address those?
You know what? Let me double check. Yeah, so that was the question about, would you say that, yeah, so that was the question
okay.
early on about ego and selfishness, which
Okay.
which I think was good. I know that we talked about some of the core beliefs, holidays and how the structure is and how people are interested in the Church of Satan, how they can get more involved, and then definitely some of the social media sites and the podcast sites, some of the artistic aspects, how it's different from paganism, how you have lesser magic and greater magic, how some of the membership works. Oh, how do you respond to, or do you have the ability to respond to, like, let's say if somebody is out there in the world claiming that they are a voice piece or a representative of the Church of Satan, or that they were a member, and basically they are spreading misinformation about your organization. Do you have a way that you can address that, or is that just kind of, or is it just like, you're just like, we don't even bother with that?
It depends on the magnitude of it, and depends on what it is that they're saying. There could be situations where we would take that as a defamatory statement, or we would consider legal action in that case. But a lot of times, these are people who are of no significance. They get no attention other than being a detractor or being some kind of conspiracy nut. And when you give them, in responding to these things, you give them more attention, and you kind of give them what they want. So it can sometimes create what's called the Streisand effect, the Barbara Streisand effect.
The Barbara Streisand effect.
Yeah, that's the idea that, okay, there's something out there that you want to hide, or you not want to hide, but you want to downplay. But by attacking it, you end up attracting more attention to it, and it starts to blow, and it blows up more. So I forget exactly how it ties to Barbara Streisand, but you can look it up, the Streisand effect. Yeah. Another case of this is in Europe, they have like the right to be forgotten laws. So if there's a website out there that has some false or outdated information about you, in Europe, you can put in a request to have Google remove it from its crawls, remove it from its index, so it can't be searched. Or you can even have like the provider take it down. So that case came into light. I think it was I forget exactly who, but it was a person who had something unfavorable in their history, in their past, and he wanted it removed, and that caused media attention to cover that law, which caused everybody to look into this guy's past, and now everybody knows what this guy was involved in. And so in the attempts to try to downplay something, he blew it up. So that's the kind of thing we want to avoid. These people are usually nobody of any significance. So by giving him more attention, we just blow it up, and we want to avoid that. And so we handle it case by case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's definitely interesting. I have never heard of the Barbara Streisand effect, so now I definitely have to go and look that up. But that is really. I wonder how that name came about. I got to find out the story behind that.
I knew, but at some point, but I totally forgot, and I don't know.
Because I've heard of the Mandela effect.
And what is that?
So the Mandela effect is that I'm going to give you my perception of how the story came about. But let me just preface it by saying that the Mandela effect is that if something is said enough, that it actually becomes true. That's the premise of it. So the Mandela effect came about when that Mandela was killed at a certain time where he wasn't actually killed. And so people believed, by hearing this story over and over again, that Mandela had actually been killed. but he wasn't. It was around the time that he was in prison in South Africa, and he was actually then later released from prison. But people were under the impression that he died in prison.
Got it.
Yeah, so this is my understanding of it. So the premise of it is that if enough people say that something is true, it becomes true.
I got it.
Yeah. And oftentimes you will, in the context that I hear it in, it is in the context of Christians who talk about the Mandela effect in terms to certain verses in the Bible, where people repeat verses in the Bible that are not completely, in their opinion, are not true or misquoted or whatever. And so it becomes that people just assume that is what that Bible quote means, when it actually doesn't. It means something else. So anyhow, so that's the one that I've heard, which is kind of interesting. But I've never heard of Barbra Streisand effect.
Yeah, look it up. It's funny.
Yeah, but it's really interesting the way that social media is. There's almost like our information age is so rapid. It's almost like people hear information and then they react to that information before finding out whether or not that information is true or not, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. You have access to all this information, to the wealth of all civilizations, the knowledge of all civilizations, and people don't have the agency to actually research things themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Raul, I really appreciate you coming back and doing this for the second time. I know that the first time I set this up, we had problems, and I really appreciate you coming back and doing this. And I didn't want you to come back and just kind of sit there and basically just say over and over again what we basically talked about. So I wanted to hear a little bit about kind of like what you do in your personal life to be a Satanist. And I definitely appreciate you talking about that. I think
covered that, so that's good.
Yeah. So, I think that's pretty much about it. If there's anything else, I think we pretty much covered everything.
No, yeah, I would just tell people to just go to the churchofsatan.com and check the news feed there to see the things that we're up to. If you go to the Black Flame, you'll see my recent interview with the synthwave artist Ghost. He's a electronic musician that plays with satanic imagery, and you'll also find a large amount of other articles and essays on there. If you go to radiofreesatan.com, you'll see all the podcasts. They're on a weekly basis. We have at least half a dozen podcasts going out there from different members. I'm working on my own. I'm kind of slow on that, but I have my own podcast coming out soon. And with Heathen Harvest, you go to heathenharvest.org, and there's a podcast section there. That's where you'll find The Forest Passage, which is my industrial culture, black metal culture podcast. And you'll find my writing and interviews, reviews there as well. There's the tags there. You can click on the tag for my name and find all my writings.
And the Facebook page, probably, do you have a link from the Church of Satan to the Facebook page?
Yeah. There's going to be at the Church of Satan website. There's a bunch of social media links there, so you can get the Facebook page, a Twitter page, a Tumblr page. Also, we have a YouTube channel.
Oh, yes, you do.
So that's actually pretty slick right now. There was not much attention paid to it before, but we've actually started to put resources towards that, and we've updated the YouTube channel. It's got a bunch of interviews with Anton LaVey, with other members. You got some interviews with myself on there. We recently posted a long forgotten rare. I don't know. It's been seen before, but in the 70s, but we haven't encountered it since then. But this interview with Anton LaVey, where in very plain English, he describes his philosophy and essentially, very confirms that he is an atheist. He is directly asked, "Do you believe in God?" And he says, "No, no, absolutely not." Like he very plain English says he does not. And this is a thing that, people have tried to dig up, try to kind of dance around saying, "Oh, well, he said these kind of things in the Satanic Bible, and he told this person who told this person, and, we heard this from that person." Well, what LaVey really believes, and this is him in very plain English saying exactly what he believes and exactly what Satanism is to him and to the Church of Satan. So I think that's a very important video, and we managed to work with the actual archivists, the people who worked with the actual person who did the interview, and we got it to be presented on our channel. So there's going to be more of that kind of stuff. Stuff we're pulling from the archives. Some new material is going to be posted there, so highly recommend that. And you'll hear from me on The Accusation Party, which is another podcast done by one of our other members, and I'm also working with Underworld Amusements, which is the book publishing company by Magister Slaughter. So there's going to be some stuff coming out that would be very interesting to Satanists. Can't really talk too much about it, but there's going to be some long occult books coming out from Underworld Amusements that will be very interesting to Satanists.
Nice.
So check out that website. There's some hints on there if you dig around, but more on that soon.
Okay. And actually that brought up a good question that I've come across every so often. And I know it's not true, but maybe you could just confirm it on this cast. But Anton LaVey, when he passed on his deathbed, people have claimed that he made a confession saying that he felt bad about his life and that he turned his life over to. You're already shaking your head. You know exactly what I'm getting to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was no deathbed confession.
There was no deathbed confession. In fact, he was a bastard when he was near death. He clung on to life. He did not have any deathbed confession. In fact, he did have an episode where he essentially died and he had to be resuscitated. Oh, wow. And he actually wrote an article about it on the Black Flame, the actual print Black Flame, that we may actually print for the website. I don't know if it's on there. I don't think it's in there now, but we may reprint that for the website. I don't think it is any of his books, but he talks about how he died and he was brought back and he did not see any bright lights, nor did he see any flames of hell. He said death was boring. It was boring, and that he has no interest in dying. He has no interest in death, and he had no deathbed confession. No, he died the way he lived, and that all that stuff is propaganda by Christians who try to warn those who may stray from the path against Satanism.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know that, but I just thought it would be a good thing to talk about.
No, that's a good point, because we still get, and unfortunately that's still out there. We do, on our YouTube channel, almost every other actually that's overstating it, but we do frequently get this comment saying like, "Oh, what about LaVey's deathbed confession?" or on our Facebook page, we'll say, it's like, people will comment on these things, and they're usually people who just, can't be bothered to do a Google search. Right. And don't know how to critically analyze information, so they'll just take the word of any kook out there on the internet.
Right. Yeah, and that's the funniest thing is that like you had mentioned earlier, it's like we have essentially we're a Google search away from finding out whether or not something is true, or we have the ability to find out information at the click of a button, whereas years ago, if you wanted to find out something was true or not, you actually had to go and find the source or talk to somebody who was around at that time to find out the source. Right. And nowadays it's just so easy to do that. But also one of the problems is you have to find out the source of that person's information, because if you just do a Google search, you'll come up with all kinds of different answers, but not all of those answers are accurate.
There was there's a rumor that was going around, and a lot of Christian evangelicals like to comment about it, is that they claim that Halloween was banned in the United States. And this is not true, because when I clicked on to find out who had said this, all of them were Christian websites, and they linked to another Christian website, and so it was a circle of Christian websites. And what they were basing it on was the Puritans, who did not celebrate anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think they celebrated the Sabbath or Easter. There was like one thing that they celebrated, but they didn't celebrate Christmas. They didn't celebrate Halloween. They didn't celebrate anything. And so these evangelicals were claiming that that Halloween was outlawed, and it was never outlawed in the United States. So that was really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true, But I was checking out the YouTube page for the Church of Satan. You have a lot of really good stuff. Like you said, it's a lot of old archived video footage of Anton LaVey back in the day, and it's really good.
Yeah, and we also have a lot of we have these playlists that we include. Well, we have these playlists in which we include material from our members. So not stuff posted directly to our channel, but we try to support all of our members who are out there on YouTube doing their own podcasts, video casts, or they have music videos, or they got recordings of their live shows. We try to promote that through our channel. And you can find those playlists. I mean, we got so many videos, so many playlists. I think there's more that actually that show on the front page. So click on the playlists like tab or link on the channel. You'll see a bunch of stuff, and you'll see just hours and hours of worth of material, of interviews, of performances. We've got magicians doing magic shows, concerts, so much stuff. So even if it's not directly on our channel, explore the stuff that we have presented there from our members.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm thinking, let's see. I think we pretty much covered everything. Yeah. So it's always funny doing the redo, because it's like the very first one, I felt like you and I were very comfortable. Everything just kind of flowed. And then in this one, it's kind of like, all right, you got to push it a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And I think, I mean, that's the nature of doing these kinds of redos, but I got a good feeling about this. I think we had some more questions last time around. We had, I think, one person asking repeatedly the same question or similar question. Yeah, but
I think that particular person, I can't remember who it is, but yeah, it sounds like they kind of had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and I don't know exactly what that is, but I think we tried to answer those questions as the best we could, but and I think it's really funny because, like I had mentioned, or maybe you're aware of, but I'm a Gardnerian witch, and there are a lot of people who consider Gardnerians, or people who are, in the initiatory line of witchcraft, who believe that we are elitists, or we claim to be the ones that have the great knowledge, or whatever it is. And it's not. It's just that we, there's a whole vetting process to it, and we have the way that we practice, and that's just kind of how we are. And it sounds like kind of Satanism, or at least the Church of Satan, is sort of the same thing. It's like you have the way that you practice, you have the way that you are, and that's just the way it is. It's not that you're trying to be elitist. Well, I mean, I'll let you speak to that. I'm not going to speak for you.
Well, I will say that we are elitist in the sense that we just view that elitism as a natural function of the world, that the world is naturally stratifying, that we don't believe in kind of egalitarian equality and things like that. And so in that sense, we are elitists, that we do see stratification. Within the Church of Satan, we see that applied as people being productive and being effective in the real world. That's what defines our stratification within the Church of Satan. And when it comes to other organizations and things like that, we're just not interested in what they're doing or what they what their attempts to try to redefine Satanism or anything like that. That's not in our interests. That is actually counter to many of our interests, so that's why we don't support them. We don't recognize, in the sense that the Church of Satan does have a set philosophy. We have a set foundation of what Satanism is. But the thing is that's what Satanism is very bedrock. It's fundamental, and you can take that and apply it in a variety of ways. So, but that doesn't imply that Satanism is different or anything like that. It's the application of Satanism is different for many individuals. So the Church of Satan promotes that. Mm-hmm. What we don't promote are like different kinds of Satanism and things like that, because again, that you end up with the danger of diluting Satanism and turning Satanism into just another derogatory term again. It loses its meaning. It loses its definition. It kind of it goes into nihilism. It can mean anything to anybody. Satanism, it's meaningless at that point. So we try to maintain control of. We do try to maintain control of what Satanism is and isn't, because we think there's power in defining what Satanism is and isn't. And it's not just a selfish power for ourselves, but it's just setting up a legacy. We've done this for 50 years, and we've been successful at doing this for 50 years. I think the problem that some people have is that they want Satanism to be something that it's not. Right. They want Satanism to be something that they can proudly just wear and get accepted by everybody. They want Satanism to be something that, will bring people to hug them and bring them into their herd. And that's not what's going to happen, at least not any time in the near future. Mm-hmm. It'd be nice, yeah, if people, if I can walk outside with a Baphomet pin and just people recognize I'm a Satanist and treat me, equally as them as a Satanist, and have Satanism be properly represented and acknowledged. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I don't want that to happen anytime soon, because I don't know. I think there's power in Satanism being an outside philosophy. But some people want to change Satanism to be more accepting of the norm, more accepting of the herd, and become something that they can wear as a good guy badge. So they'll try to say, oh, we've evolved Satanism, or we have, updated Satanism to current standards of whatever norms are out there right now. But the reality is that that was never the purpose of Satanism. The whole idea of Satanism was to be kind of an outsider philosophy, be a power philosophy that leads individuals to influence society from the outside, as outliers. And I think that's very important to the philosophy, and any attempts to try to normalize it in a way, I think, are fundamentally contrary to the philosophy. I think it's different than saying okay, well, we're just taking LaVey's ideas and just making our little twist, spinning it in our little way. It's no, you're not. You're actually taking a very core, fundamental piece of the philosophy and just ripping it out and replacing it with something else that it's not. So I do see that happening from time to time, and that's what irks me about those attempts, and that's why I don't really, we don't acknowledge those things, because those are against our philosophy.
Mm-hmm. And it brings up a good question. So the symbol of Satanism, the inverted pentagram, then you often you'll see sort of superimposed on it or in the background a goat's head.
Yeah.
What is the story behind that? Is that actually the goat of Mendez, or is that the Baphomet image?
It's the goat of Mendez. It's
okay.
the symbol of the scapegoat. Also some carnality, sexual carnality, that's kind of open to interpretation, but is the goat of Mendez, yeah. And in some instances, people will kind of twist that to mean more like the Baphomet, but I think but it is called the sigil of Baphomet, so it is in terms of the metaphor, it is the Baphomet too. So, but I know the Baphomet also represents, as the full figure of the Baphomet represents a variety of different things as well.
Right. Yeah. The full the story that I have heard is that the image of Baphomet, the whole image is, it's filled with all kinds of alchemical symbolism. Apparently, that Eliphas Levi put into it.
Yeah, and I mean those things are important to recognize, and I think that it could be useful to a Satanist. Seeing the Baphomet as a symbol of balance.
Right.
I think there's a lot that can be used in that, and I think to try to whitewash the Baphomet, to try to present it in some way that's more family friendly. I don't know, not crazy about that.
So what do you think of the statue of Baphomet that they put up? I'm trying to remember where they put that up. Maybe you know about that.
Yeah, I do. It's in Oklahoma. I believe is where they tried to put it up. But it's a well-made statue, and I can appreciate some of the aesthetics in it and some of the craftsmanship in it. But I don't recognize it as really Baphomet. There's some significant issues with the symbolism that it's presenting, and I also have issues in the way that it's being used politically. But I'm not going to go knocking down doors and tell people what to do. So I'm just going to say it's not my thing. No.
Right. All right. Well, we've been talking for like 2 hours now.
Anything else in the chat room, or?
I'm kind of surprised that the chat room is pretty quiet. We had one person who popped in who just said they were lurking, and and they had also mentioned, I think when we were talking about Anton LaVey's the rumor around Anton LaVey's bed
confession.
Confession, and they were just kind of agreeing with it. Oh, let me see. Somebody popped up with something. We've got a very, very important question. So you might want to get yourself ready for this one, because it's a doozy.
All right.
Cake or pie?
Ooh, cake.
Yeah. Cake?
Cake.
You're going to go with cake?
I'm going to go with cake. Yeah.
Okay, so on a scale from 1 to 100, you're going 100% cake?
Okay. Okay, that's different. Okay, I would go 80% cake. No, 75% cake, 25% pie. Okay. Yeah, because I like sweetness, and pie tends to be more tarty because of fruits. I like a good apple pie. I actually love a good apple pie. But yeah, I love a tiramisu. I love cakes. I love tres leches cake, like a Mexican and Spanish cake. So
that sounds good. I've had tiramisu before, but I've never had that.
Yeah. Check that out when you have the chance.
I will. What's it called
tres
again?
Leches. Spanish. Tres leches. So it's like 3 milk cake.
Okay. Yeah, because I live pretty close to the Mission District, so I bet you if I went out there, I could probably find that.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's got, I think, what is that? It's got different. It's just got so many. It's got layers and it's got different textures. It's really good. So yeah, I would say about 80% cake. Yeah.
All right, 80% cake. Yeah, because I know tiramisu is really. They make some really good tiramisu here in North Beach, and it is just delicious. It is. It's really good. And then the Mission District, they just have. If you want really good Mexican food, they have some of the best, and also they have. What is it called? But they have. I can't remember the name of it now, but there's so many good places around here.
I imagine.
Yeah. So, all right. Okay. Let's see. I think we pretty much covered everything.
All right. Good.
Let me see. I think so. Oh, I put out the second part to that Mark Passio video. That's out on my website.
Okay.
on my YouTube page. But I'm glad I finally finished that one. And I appreciate Peter Gilmore's help with that. Let me see.
Yeah. He was very impressed with how you handled that situation, and he thought you had very intelligent responses to, every point that he brought up, and we were very happy with that.
Yeah, thank you. And also thank you. I really appreciate you putting that on your web page. So it looks like we do have another question here.
Okay.
Let me see. Not that this is your thing, but anything about the satanic warlock? You know anything about that?
Yeah, that's going to be coming out, I believe, in Halloween, and that's going to. So, Anne LaVey wrote The Satanic Witch, or The Complete Witch, which was the original title, and that was a book on lesser magic and how women can apply the satanic principles of lesser magic to get their to meet their goals and to get what they want. And it's just taking advantage of their natural abilities and manipulating men or other women in order to kind of do what you want. And so that was actually kind of revolutionary at the time, and at the late 60s, 70s, because there was kind of like the feminist movement. Actually, not kind of, there was the wave of feminism, and it discouraged women from using their own kind of feminine features to their advantage. It kind of shamed them from doing that. And LaVey saying, no, you should be proud of being a woman, and you should use things that make you a woman to your advantage. And so the Satanic Warlock is LaVey had some things in the works to put out a Satanic Warlock, but that never happened. So now Magister Bob Johnson, who is the owner and operator of Old Nick magazine, which is a satanic adult magazine and website, he's been in the field of carnal pleasure for a long time, and he's kind of seen both sides of the kind of interplay between men and women, and sexuality between them, and the power dynamics between them. So he thought it was time for the Satanic Warlock to come out. So he wrote the book, and I think it's in its final phases of editing and proofreading and kind of getting it up to snuff, ready for publication. So that should be, I believe it is Halloween, but you can search, Google search the Satanic Warlock. You can search for it on our website. There's probably going to be announcements there and links there to check it out. But I very much look forward to it and recommend people to pre-order it if it's still available for pre-order, or just mark it on their calendars when it comes out.
Oh, okay. So that's actually a book that's going to be coming out.
Yeah, it's a book. Yes, that's right.
Okay. Because it's been years since I read the Satanic Bible, but I do remember coming across that section that you're talking about, how women can use their sexuality and their beauty to their advantage. But I thought that he had written that in such a way where he was sort of expressing that men and women can do that. Men kind of have their own way of using their aggression and their authority to kind of do what they want in the world, and then women have their own way of doing that. They should be afraid of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, he saw it as a balance. He saw that there should be a balance between men and women, and he wrote a separate book, The Satanic Witch, just all about that. And it's actually probably his most original piece of occult literature, and the philosophy, and also partly philosophy, because you've got the Satanic Bible, which is the foundation of Satanism. You have the Satanic Rituals, which is more just instructions and examples of satanic rituals. And then you have the Satanic Witch, which is I think it's the thickest of his of that trio, and that's all about just using lesser magic. And there's actually a bibliography at the end of that book, which is lists all his sources, all his influences. And actually, that's a good point because there is something called the Complete Witch Project, or the Complete Witch Bibliography Project, which is a website out there. You can search for the Complete Witch or the Satanic Witch Bibliography Project on Google. It'll come up. I think
we got a question about that.
Yeah, I think it's CompleteWitch.com, maybe. I'm not sure. But that lists the full bibliography, and it provides links to Amazon or to other sources for all the books that were discussed in the Complete Witch and the Satanic Witch. And I think that's really, really, really important because people forget that LaVey was self-taught. You know, he was, and he just pulled from a variety of sources. One of my biggest pet peeves are people who think, oh, LaVey, he just pulled from Ayn Rand and Nietzsche and Crowley, and that was it, and that's the end of the story. It's like, no, okay, yes, he was definitely influenced by Rand, by Nietzsche, by Crowley in some ways, but he was so heavily influenced by so many other authors and writers and scientists and biologists, sociologists. And if you just look at the bibliography to the Complete Witch, you'll find just the slew of influences on him. It just spans so many fields. And I think that's very important to Satanism because Satanism demands study. Satan demands study. We demand that you reach out there, and that's to us, that's what's occult to us. That is occultism to us, to dig into, to research into sciences, into things like that to help you understand human nature and how to manipulate human nature. And that is in the Satanic Witch, and I'm sure will be in the Satanic Warlock.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like we got a question here about what you had just mentioned, that bibliography. Magistra Nadriana?
Nadramia? Mm-hmm.
Okay, did I say that right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Has mentioned that she's writing a book about the Church of Satan history. Any developments there? So it sounds kind of like you were talking a little bit about that.
Oh, okay. Blanche Barton is actually working on that. So that's Blanche Barton is working on the new edition of the book called The Church of Satan. So that was actually put out. I have a copy here somewhere, but that was put out I think before LaVey passed, I believe, and so they went through the history of the Church of Satan, kind of what we talked about earlier, what led to LaVey founding the Church of Satan and the things that it was involved in, and the things that the priesthood was involved in its time. And so that was it was kind of an accompaniment to Blanche Barton's Secret Life of a Satanist, which was focused on Anton LaVey. Secret Life of a Satanist was LaVey's biography. And the Church of Satan was more of like a biography of the organization. But that is now out of date. And Blanche Barton is working on the new edition of that. And she actually sent out a questionnaire to many members of the organization to get a feel of what the Church of Satan is doing right now. And a lot of those results are going to be in the book, in the new edition. I don't have an update. I'm actually going to be spending some time with her soonish, so I'll bring it up and I'll see where that stands, but that should be coming soon as well.
Okay. And it sounds like maybe if people wanted to find out more information, are you going to have updates on your website on that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All these things we'll be updating on our website and social media.
Okay. Okay, great. So if they want to find out more information about that, they can go there.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So it sounds like you got stuff coming in the works. Sounds like you got a couple of books coming out, and
there's so much. I mean, that's one of the things that is magical to me with the Church of Satan is that there's just so much stuff going on. Right now I'm working on a video project. I'm working on. I'm helping out with this project called the Third Side Media. I'm helping promote them on the Church of Satan website. That's a bi-weekly YouTube streaming show like this, but it's going to have a panel of Satanists, and they just talk about, I don't know, anything. Actually, they don't even announce a topic until they go live, and then they announce a special guest and a topic, and that's, I think, every 2 weeks. So that's Third Side. And then there's there's another YouTube video project coming out where Reverend Adam Campbell is interviewing members of the Church of Satan. That's going to be a YouTube project as well. So I've been coordinating with him and his team on promoting that stuff. I'm working with Magus Gilmore on a variety of other projects, some of his music. So there's going to be some of his old recordings that are going to be coming out on the website that he's working with another member of the Church of Satan, Warlock Gene. He's helping Magus Gilmore polish up some of these old recordings that he did, get them digitized, and we'll have them posted on the website. I'm working with Magister Slaughter, promoting Underworld Amusements and some of his other projects. I've got a foreword to a book that I'm working on. I'm working on interviews for the Black Flame and articles for the Black Flame. Constantly working on Radio Free Satan. It's just if I could show you my I use this app called Wunderlist. It's like his productivity app, and it's just like Church of Satan activities. It's just stacks, and it's just like, okay, this is done, this is in process. I just got so much stuff to do that I'm working with other members, and this is stuff that I love doing. I love working with productive people and promoting them, collaborating with them, giving my input or them helping me in my projects. I'm working on my own music. I have a project called Anarch. So kind of like anarchist, but not. It's called Anarch, and it's noise, ambient, experimental music. I create sound effects, manipulate it, loop it. I'm also kind of teaching myself melody and things like that, and to try to create more structure to this kind of ambient sounds that I create. And I've got I'm been released on some compilations, and I'm working on a full release to be put out on a pretty well-known industrial label. Nice. So that's in the process. And so it's just constantly stuff to do, and it's constant just living life, making the most of it. And that's Satanism. And also, having a drink or two and relaxing.
Well, you got to do that. You got to be able to relax.
Yeah, and spending time with my family. I love my family. Like, I have a beautiful, amazing wife, my cat. We love spending time with him. And one of my favorite activities, really, honestly, is just staring at my cat and just seeing what he does in his life. Just like how he just lives life. And like, that's the life right there. Just do what you want. Have people take care of you. But our cat is a rescue. He's a feral rescue cat. Okay. And so he still has that kind of animalistic feral instincts in him. And I just love watching that. It's like, oh wow, like he's like totally instinctual, like when he hunts, when we'll hunt together, we'll play a game where I hide and he hunts and I hunt him and he hides. And just that tapping into this animal instinctual element in him and in me, I love that. And my wife and I also try to go out there. We go camping, we go hiking, we try to go off-road hiking. I have an off-road vehicle that we try to just go out there in places that, less touched by other people and kind of get in tune with nature and just look at a unclouded night sky and appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things that you had mentioned, so didn't you say that? So it sounds like you're really busy with the Church of Satan. Like you said, you just have all these things that are coming up, but I assume that you work, and don't you go to school? How do you find time to do all of this stuff?
I do work. I have a very flexible schedule. I have my own schedule, I like to say. I get up when I want to get up, and I work until my work is done, and then I get to have the time to do what I need to do. So I'm very fortunate, but I don't want to say fortunate because I very much planned it this way. So I've got a very flexible schedule, but I do have my other responsibilities that I take care of, and I make sure those things are taken care of. But yeah, no, I'm done with school. Set through that, so.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because sometimes I talk to people and they're like, I do this, and I do this, and I work, and I go to school. I'm like, how do you find time to do all of this stuff? But I guess it's just planning, really. So let me see. We have one more question, if you don't mind.
No, sure.
Oh, she's just commenting. Sounds like you got a lot of stuff. Best of luck to you all.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Thank
yeah.
you.
So, all right. This has been a lot of fun. Maybe we can set up another time to chat again. Maybe a little farther down the line.
Sure.
Maybe in a couple of weeks from now, if you don't mind. Maybe we can get together and talk about that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, well, Reverend Raul, I really appreciate this. This was wonderful, and I appreciate you coming back and giving me another chance with this.
Absolutely. No, not a problem. This is a blast. I had a great time, and I'm always happy to hear from you. So if you ever want me on, and in a couple of weeks, I'm be more than happy to join you.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. And so thank you all for joining us. And if you're interested in any of the websites or podcasts that Raul had mentioned, there will be links as soon as I get this. As soon as YouTube processes all the little pixels it needs to do and gets loaded up, I will put in the links in below, so you'll be able to check them out. Definitely go to the Church of Satan website, and from there you can find links to all of these that we had mentioned. I'm sure pretty much all of them. Would that be right, Raul?
Yeah, most of them. Yeah. And I'll send you a set of links to put up there. I mean, I almost need to have like my own website where I just like post all the links that I'm working on.
There you go, just a website of nothing but links.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll provide you what you need. Yes.
Awesome, great, thank you so much. All right, so thank you so much, Raul, and thank you all for joining us. So,
all right, thank you.
All right,
take care and control.
All right, thank you. Okay.
All right.
Whoops.